But what caused the financial success, that came from tricks. I just learned a few basic tricks from people like my grandfather. You know, I have a good mind, but I'm way short of prodigy. And I've had results in life that are prodigious. There are all kinds of tricks that I just got into by accident in life. One, I invert all the time. I was a weather forecaster when I was in the Air Corps. And how did I handle my new assignment? Being a weather forecaster in the Air Corps is a lot like being a doctor that reads x-rays. It's a pretty solitary. You're in the hangar in the middle of the night and drawing weather maps and you're clearing pilots, but you're not interfacing with a bunch of your fellow men very much. And so I figured out the minute I was actually making weather forecasts for real pilots, I said, how can I kill these pilots? Now that's not the question that most people would ask. But I want to know what the easiest way to kill them would be so I could avoid it. And so I thought it through in reverse that way. And I finally figured out, I said, there are only two ways I'm going to kill a pilot. So I'm going to get him to icing his plane can't handle, and that will kill him. Or I'm going to get him someplace where he's going to run out of gas before he can land because all the airports are stuck again. And I just was fanatic about avoiding those two hazards. And if Kobe Bryant had had somebody like me, he'd still be with us. Yeah, it was so stupid to kill yourself that way. But just that basic, I may have learned that from my grandfather. My grandfather would say to me when I'm swimming, he'd say, swim as long as you want, but stay near the shore. But you can laugh, but he was a very wise man.
Yeah. What I'm hearing you say is that you, as a discipline, look at what the risk is on the other side of the situation and you avoid that. That's one of the rules.
Well, it's like a lot of practical problems in algebra. If you invert, you can solve it easily. If you don't, you can't solve it easily.
Exactly right.
And so, of course, I had that trick very early. And most people, they say, how can you, please tell us what you do to save India, or to help India. And of course, I would approach it differently. I'd say, what could I do which would most easily hurt India? And approaching it in reverse that way, I got better results.
You look at the vulnerabilities.
Yeah, yes, and I have a whole bag of tricks like that. I went to the ROTC, both in high school and college. And the ROTC taught me to fire mortar shells or artillery shells, one shot over, one shot short, and then kapow. Well, I never shot any damn shells, but I've been using that mental trick all my life. That's how I determine what size to make something. Over and under and kapow. And so I just got a bag of tricks. And I got the right bag of tricks early. And of course, it's been of enormous help to me. Let me give you an example. I had a client once when I was a young lawyer, and he owned a bunch of hilly ranch land on the edge of civilization, not very far from here in Southern California. And the Edison Company came through and they wanted a new easement through his land. They already had some easements. And he hired the leading appraiser in Orange County, real estate appraiser. And he had the idea that he should have $250,000 for this easement from the Edison Company. And this leading appraiser, who was very pompous and very old and very distinguished, and he told him, no, I'm sorry, it's only $125,000 value in your damn ranch. And so he came to me and said, Charlie, can you talk some sense into this elderly appraiser? So I looked at his problem and I told the appraiser what I thought how he was doing his own appraisal wrong. I'm not a real estate appraiser, he is. And what he had done is what he was taught to do in appraisal school. He thought the problem through in two dimensions, and he figured out from comparable sales what the value per acre was, and then he computed the acreage, and he had something a little bit on the damage the easement would do to the remaining property and so, but it was all done in two dimensions. And I said to this appraiser, you've got to do this in three dimensions. You know, God gave us three dimensions. And I said, if they put the utility towers, big transmission line towers, which is why the Edison, it's going to freeze the grade. And the logical way to develop your land is to lop off the top of the hills and put them in the valley. That's the way hilly land is developed, and they're doing enormous damage to you by freezing the grade. And he said, he wouldn't change a damn thing. So I said to my elderly client, I think you have to fire this twit. And I will hire you an appraiser who can think. And so I got him $600,000, which wasn't at all hard because I was dealing with a bunch of honest engineers at the Edison who did think in 3 dimensions. But again, that's so simple, but you'd be surprised how many lawyers would screw that one up. And of course, people like that appraiser who didn't know his own business very well because he didn't pay attention to the fundamentals, those people are always with us. And if you just have the mental trick of constantly going back to the basics, it's pretty basic insight that
Are you conscious?
the geometrical problem in a real world is 3-dimensional.
Are you conscious of the rules, or they're just there?
Well, it's so habitual with me.
Yeah, I understand.
And I revolve possibilities, and I rag problems hard. And if they don't yield, I come back. And so this is just a bag of tricks, and it enables a non-prodigious man to get prodigious results. It's an enormous advantage. Of course, if you learn your own language, that's a very useful gift. And of course, learning the basic math of life is another tremendous gift. And if you're really good at picking up language and doing just basic arithmetic, you can take enormous territory. You don't need much else. I have never looked at a calculus problem since I left Caltech. Never left it. Never looked once, never used it. And I was a whiz. By the way, I went away totally. 70-some years, that was enough. Yeah, I don't know about your calculus, but mine is gone. But this other stuff never goes away. And if you keep honing it, and if you get good at it, then you learn something that's more important than what they teach you in college, is you learn the method of learning. When I want to know something, I just learn it. Take, for instance, I got to the Harvard Law School. I couldn't figure out how Reverend Moon was inviting people out to one weekend, and they came back brainwashed zombies for the rest of their lives. And nobody in the Harvard Law School could explain it to me. So I said, I'll figure it out for myself. You know, my mother had a little nursery rhyme, a little red hen that said, I'll do it myself, said the little red hen. So I said, I'll figure this out. Well, it took me a long time, but I finally figured out to my satisfaction exactly what was being done. And they just stumbled into this through practice evolution. It wasn't calculated forethought. They just assembled a bunch of psychological tricks and pounded them on these people all at once under conditions involving stress. And at a certain point, the brain would just snap. And they had these people transformed into slaves. Boom. Well, that was a very interesting thing, but of course nobody wants to talk about it because it has implications, people fear. But I think that that habit of, if they won't explain it to you, figure it out for yourself, has helped me enormously in life. It's also hurt me, because you give terrible offense when you go into somebody else's profession and act like you know more than he does.
Right.
I'm much smoother now than I was when I was young. And I'm still pretty insufferable. A happy life is very simple. The first rule of a happy life is low expectations. That's one you can easily arrange. And if you have unrealistic expectations, you're going to be miserable all your life. And I was good at having low expectations, and that helped me. And also, when you get reverses, if you just suck it in and cope, that helps if you don't just fretfully stew yourself into a lot of misery. There are certain behavioral rules. Always tell the truth and never lie to anybody about anything. Those are pretty good rules, and they're pretty simple. And a lot of the good rules of life are like that. They're just very simple. And do it right the first time, 𝐓𝐡𝐚𝐧𝐤. That's a really good rule. It's kind of a snare and a delusion to outguess macroeconomic cycles. Very few people do it successfully, and some of them do it by accident. When the game is that tough, why not adopt the other system of swimming as competently as you can and figuring that over a long life you'll have your share of good tides and bad tides. I think you can count on more booms and busts over your remaining lifetime. How big and with what cyclicality, I can't tell you. I can tell you the best way of coping, which is just to put your head down and behave creditably every day. Ben Franklin, marriage is like the most important decision you have, not your business career. It'll do more for you, good or bad, than anything else. And Ben Franklin had the best advice ever given on marriage. He said, keep your eyes wide open before marriage and half shut thereafter.